Okay, so today we're going to talk about goal setting and arrows. And so when we think about the things that we want in life, we might have, and each individual gets to have their own goals or their own things that they're going after. And I would challenge you to, with today's lesson, make it very reflective. What are 3 main goals that you really want to achieve in your life? And it can be long-term goals. It can be like a short-term goal. It doesn't matter. We're not going to get into the specifics of that. But just think in general, and you can push pause. What are 3 things that you would like to have? Like to feel, like to have, like what are those goals? And make them, it can be very general. So just think about what those 3 things might be. And then write them down. And then come back. Okay, so I'm trusting that you wrote those down and now you're back. Now, you have those 3 things identified. And now what we can do is make a practice of checking in and seeing if our actions, thoughts, and behaviors are aligning with your steps towards meeting those goals. And so I think of it as like you have a target. That's your goals are your targets. And we want to be doing things that make it so that when our arrow will be hitting this target. There's the analogy too of like if you're flying from the west coast to the east coast and the nose of the airplane, is off any small amount, you won't end up hitting your destination. You have to have the target, your arrow pointing in the right, like directly towards the target as much as possible. If you get off, then you have to redirect, right? And the more you kind of get off, the more you have to overcorrect to get back on target. So the best thing we can do is these little check-ins to see, is my arrow pointing in the right direction? Because if you find yourself like, oh, I waited too long to see if I was pointing in the right direction and you're way off, then you have to really course correct, which means a lot of different behaviors, thoughts, whatever. It just means more effort. Whereas if we can do those small things or check-ins and making sure that what we're doing is in alignment with our ultimate goal, then it makes it easier to maintain. And there's all these other details to actual goal setting that we're not diving into right now. This is just a very general idea of things that we can do when we're thinking about goal setting. So another way that I conceptualize this is which way is your arrow pointing? So if we're thinking like, just like, is your arrow pointing towards your goal, towards the target? And we can also think about it like, is it like, if it's on target, then we could say like, all right, we're on track, we're going, it's positive, basically, like, yes. And so like it's on track. But then if you think it's not, then it's like, oh, we're off track. So then the arrow is pointing down. It's like gonna hit the ground. Gravity's pulling it down. And that's easy to happen because that's life. So is your arrow pointing up towards the target, or is it pointing down? Gravity's life, all these other circumstances, excuses, whatever it can be. So we want to be like as pointing up towards the target as possible, as much as possible. And one of the first steps is just checking in and evaluating, is this in alignment with my goal? Is my arrow pointing up? Is it on the trajectory of hitting my goal? If it's not, that does not mean that we all is lost, we will never reach our goals again. Heck no! It just means we have to course correct. It means that we have to do a lot to get our arrow pointing up. Maybe it's just strategically. Maybe it's not like one big thing, but just whatever we can do. And feels so much better when we are acting, thinking, and doing things that are in alignment with what we know to be like in our hearts is what we really want. And so the more that we do that, even those actions, so it's not just about the goal, it's about the feeling that we get from the small steps. It's about the journey, just like a trip, like you don't go on a trip so that you can get home. Your destination is somewhere, and there's a whole fun that can happen in that amount of time. Same with reading books. It's not just about getting to the end of the book. It's what we learn in the meantime. So hopefully you can use that.